All right, all right. Are we on?
Looks
Welcome
like we're
everybody
live.
to episode 19 of the All Things Recon podcast with Joshua Call in the upper pick and Bobby Wilcox. I'm Bobby Wilcox. Sorry,
Yes,
Josh. I know you
sir.
usually do that introduction, so I kind of stole your thunder a little bit.
Oh, no worries. Now I'll introduce the topic then. So we're talking today
Awesome.
about some of the most common pitfalls that we see in recon. Now, remember, me and Bobby have extensive experience installing our recon tools. Of course, Bobby has a wealth of dealership experience beyond that as well. And so, whenever we get to go into a new organization, we get to see how that organization runs their reconditioning program. And as a result of that, we kind of get to see how the rest of the dealership runs as well.
Mm.
Recon touches every department, there are a lot of individuals involved. So, we got to talk to each of those people. We got to get one on one with them to make sure that they understand where they fit into the process and how they're going to operate our tools. And so as a result of that, we get a chance to see the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to reconditioning. And today, we wanted to kind of deviate a little bit from the usual topic. Of course, we want to stay positive as much as possible, but today we also want to talk about, the troubles that you can have and the troubles that you can cause yourself when you make certain decisions, certain process decisions that can have an extremely negative impact on your overall times. And I'd say, Bobby, you and I are going to agree. We may not, but I'm willing to bet that we'll agree on the number one. What's the number one? We could say it at the same time, right? Selling
Uh,
cars. Uh, Go ahead.
go
What
for
were
it.
you going to say? I was going to say
Nope.
selling cars before they've been inspected or recon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's a result of, yeah, that's a pitfall. Especially now that a lot of dealerships like to do pictures and quick detail of the cars to get them online, right? Unfortunately, then you become famous for also selling cars that have never been through the shop. It's sitting there, it's ready to go, it's deliverable. We got customers on it, sell, 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 and then you get to also deal with the downside of that is everything that's wrong with the car that's discovered after the sale. Now your feet are held to the fire and you have to fix everything. You might have sent that car to wholesale because it needs $3,000 worth of work. Now the customer's in it, right? It's been titled, they bought it, and now you're married to it. So
Yep.
good. Mine
And
was
I,
going to be a little more broader, just not thinking that it's important enough to organize, build a culture around it. Create that dedicated team in the dealership to focus on recon. But we can get into that after that. But to Josh's topic, yeah, a lot of dealerships we find, especially as we adjust the workflows of our recon tool, right? Rapid Recon Pro, Velocity, and Rapid Recon. They got that pre-wash and quick wash and pre-photos, right? Let's get these cars online. It's a digital world now, and most people. You shop for cars right from your phone, right? If you don't have it online and on your website, you don't have the car, and it's a race because the dealership down the street and everybody else is putting these on, online. And so you get that done, and then the cars are sitting there for a little bit, and then you're getting hits on these cars. When you do a search for vehicles online, all of your inbound leads are going to come on the cars you just got because there's something with the algorithms. For some reason, people always land on cars that you've just acquired, right? Why can't they be on my 30-day-old car, my 90-day car that's sitting on the lot? We're looking at 90 minutes ago. I put this online and, people are hitting on it, right? So, and there's the car clean, waiting for the shop, and the salesperson's looking for the keys. They want to test drive it. The customer likes it, so they want to get them done, right? The thrill of the kill, and then
yep.
the aftermath is worse, right? And then not to mention the liability if something, for heaven forbid, if something was unsafe about that vehicle, and the car didn't turn left when it was supposed to, or the brakes failed, and now you got some serious liability on your hands, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd say number one for me would be selling cars before the recon, only because I think in the most troubled operations I ever saw, that was the consistent theme, was that they would sell a unit sometimes even before they'd inspected it, right? And that's what opens you up to those financial and legal troubles
Hmm.
from not even knowing not even knowing this if this unit is safe to drive, not
Yeah.
knowing if it's past a state inspection.
Right.
Um, I'd say that above and beyond the dealerships that I've seen that really struggle, that's their one thing that really puts a hamper on everything else. And there's knock-on effects too, like you described, Bobby. When that customer inevitably comes back, you're on the hook for whatever it is you didn't disclose to them.
Hmm.
And then that work is now service waiter work, essentially. It's both like a used car that you're completing a sale on and service waiter work. So it's going to get put ahead of everything else already in your hopper. It needs to be
Yep.
prioritized because the customer's pissed. He wants that car
Yep.
immediately. He thought it was in a certain condition when he bought it. Actually,
Hmm.
no, miss, no, sir. We need to do X, Y, and Z in order for this car to be ready for you. Well,
Yep.
that's going to be put in the priority, and so everything else is going to take a little bit longer then. So that one car now has impacted, it might add an extra day to the rest of your
To
inventory because
three or
you've had
four or
to.
five other cars. Yeah. Yeah. Or
Yep.
to perfect. That's a good point. And when these cars come back to the dealership, if it's something related to the sale, the service drive is going to, avoid that at all costs. It's going to go right back to the used car team. Right.
Yep.
And you got to put it in queue. Now you got to stop, drop, and handle that car. So yes, I've personally experienced several cases where you spotted a car, you send it over the curb with the customer, and it comes back and it's an absolute mess, right? So yes, that is one absolute. That's a great point, Josh, because especially now, more and more dealerships are going to the pre-photo, pre-wash, pre-photo. Get these cars online right away. So
Yeah, well,
w-
I want to speak to that a little bit as well, Bobby, because that's something that, from conversations with my dad, being that he's extensive
mhm,
experience in digital marketing, he said, if your car isn't published in 30 days, you're just not going to get any hits on that car any further. You need
yeah,
those. And I think it's even a tighter time frame than that. I think it's like within a few days actually of acquiring the vehicle, you need to have those photos
yeah. And for those
in
of you out
order.
there, Josh's dad happens to be with the corporate group for the Premier Group down in New Orleans and some other parts of the country. So he's at a corporate level. But go ahead, Josh. I didn't mean to step on. I just want to let him know who your dad was.
Yeah, yeah. I just, he's speaking from an operational, high level standpoint when he's talking about this. So I trust his word on it. And I
Hmm.
know a lot of our dealers already have that a firm understanding, especially those sales managers that are checking into this to this podcast. But speaking to that, I understand that is a priority because a significant portion of your sales are probably coming from online hits that then generate into people coming into the dealership and finally buying a car. So knowing that, knowing how vital the internet is to bringing people into your dealership, we do have to put a priority on getting those cars photographed. What I've been thinking lately, Bobby, is if you can manage it, the best way to do this is to uh, perform your initial inspection, figure out the pricing, get the approval done, and then while you're waiting on parts, if you have to wait at all, that's a great time to get the detail done and the
Hmm.
photograph done as well. And that you can manage
It's
that
got to be
effectively. If
managed.
it
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have to be managed, but it can be done. And with that, you can actually save a lot of time on your inventory because you're not, there's no needless waiting. Basically, if there's any downtime on the car, something else gets done in the meantime, right?
Hmm.
So there's a big window of time between when we get the approval finished and when the parts department actually finally wrangles all the parts together and makes that available to the technician.
Hmm.
Inevitably, inevitably, there's going to be some kind of time frame there, and whether or not that's enough time to detail a car is going to depend on the car. That's why it needs to be managed precisely.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I genuinely think that is a great way to cut down a huge amount of time. Is use that lull period between when you know what parts you need versus actually acquiring them, and use that period. Get your detail done. If it's going to be even longer, get your vendors in there if they need to do
Yeah.
a little paint touch up or a little PDR.
Yep.
But that I think what I would say, Bobby, to your point is one of the biggest pitfalls we see is people doing that initial photos and wash, but doing it too thoroughly. Just adding two or
Hmm.
three extra days onto every single car with no distinction whatsoever.
I was
That's
going to
the
follow that
real
up.
problem.
Yeah, I was going to
Go
follow
ahead.
that up too. If you're gonna do that, you got to be fast, right? I'll tell the dealership outright. I hate that. Okay, and most service departments would applaud. Yes, we hate cars getting pictures because they got to deal with all the crap when these cars sell, right? Too early. Um, internalize your photo process. Make sure somebody in your dealership is responsible for photos. If you got an outside company that you come on, 3 days a week, or the outside picture company for your pre-photos, come on. This the photo quality on cell phones now. I'm sure we can get some good quality photos up just to get you on the internet. Make sure you internalize that process, or have your if it's an in-house. More and more dealerships are bringing photos in-house because whether it's a porter slash picture taker or whatever, that's a best practice in my opinion. Even after the fact, doing the final photos. If digital marketing is so important, you're going to hire a company that shows up 2 to 3 days a week to take pictures for the internet. So I think more and more dealerships, because of the urgency of that, are bringing the photo taking in house to an employee that actually works at the dealership. So, highly
Yeah, and
recommended.
to that point, Bobby, another thing I've been thinking about lately is, we have a lot of workflows that have been kind of standardized with photos in there. And I've
Mhm,
just been thinking we really shouldn't be tracking photos in the workflow anymore. This is maybe just a conversation between you and I, but I've been wondering if maybe that should just be tracked through the work items instead as a separate thing, because having a
mhm,
step for photos just doesn't really make much sense to me, especially if it's early on in the process. So the
mhm.
idea that we're going to wait, an extra 2 or 3 days or 2 days before the photo guy even arrives to address those
Yeah.
cars to push them forward in the process, I mean, that's ridiculous. I,
Yeah,
I
let
haven't
him go
seen
chase
many
him.
dealers yeah, I haven't seen many dealers actually do that, but I have seen a handful that do, and I would say this is another pitfall, which is being slavishly devoted to your workflow, and in the sense that, like, oh, this car's in this step, it can't be in this step. Like, oh, this car's here right now, it must be waiting on that. It's like it's it's hard to describe, but it's like taking the workflow at face value and not adding that initial, like, thought about that the employee would understand about, like, what's physically actually taking place with the car.
Right. Okay, and
So
then
think so think Go ahead.
kinda call an audible, right? So you gotta be able to, cars can move forward and backwards. You don't it's not written in stone that they gotta follow one step to the other. But what does it take? It takes a focused employee, right? Which kinda rolls into my next segue into another pitfall, is not having a dedicated team
Yeah.
dedicated to used cars, right? So Josh is specifically the internal writer. Okay. The guy who writes all the ROs for the dealership, the guy that's probably got special victims unit above his desk because he takes all the inbound inquiries and heat and crap, everything used cars. It's like playing whack-a-mole, right? But he's the most important person in a recon process. Your used car manager might think he is. Okay. No, he's just the biggest customer. Okay. And, um, but the person who really is pivotal to driving a process, especially when leveraging our tools for making sure it goes smoothly and efficiently, right? I was trying to talk. There's a group up in New York that I've been dealing with. In some of their stores, they got the dedicated writer. And there's another store where it's split between two writers, and then it's between customer pay. If you don't have somebody whose full-time job it is to keep an eye on your recon process, aka the internal writer, what I call the recon champion or the velocity manager, right? Um, that's rule number one. And then, when I talk about the three pillars, I've said this a million times. Pillar number one is, you know, get a dedicated team. And whoa, what do you mean by dedicated? Okay, well, you got an internal writer. That's first and foremost. Have somebody on the service side whose job is to only deal with writing ROs, putting together estimates, communicating with the used car department, and using the tool to manage the cars going through the workflow. First and foremost. Second part of that dedicated team, and have depending on your volume, have a certain number of technicians in the shop that do nothing but work on used cars. And I know sometimes, I see a lot of dealerships try to make a good run at, oh, we can just use the main population of the shop and, put cars through. But I don't care who you are. Used cars will always take a backseat to customer pay. You're waiting for a technician to become available, right? There's nobody sitting in, when you're home with a 3-hour oil change, there's nobody sitting in the showroom bitching at the service manager about how long my car's taken, right? So, that's customer pay is going to take precedence over used cars, unfortunately. I've seen a couple dealerships make a good run at it, but inevitably, Josh, I think you can attest to this, 2 to 3 days slower at recon when you don't have dedicated technicians in the shop.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and that really comes from idle time. I say idle time, but it doesn't mean that they're not that your workers aren't doing it, your employees aren't doing anything. It means that they're doing some other task. They're prioritizing what's important for them that day, which for a mainline technician is going to be their service waiters.
The customer,
You know,
yeah. Customer had a
yeah,
10 o'clock appointment for an oil change, and then they discovered it needs brakes and whatever. And the lady's getting her hair done, and they're trying to get a hold of her, and he's waiting for a response, and and meanwhile, and then spread that across the whole shop. That's every technician in the shop. And then, oh, used cars, we'll get to it when we can. So,
yeah,
so a dedicated team. I don't care if even if you're a low volume store, even if you got one guy. In our workflows, we always build in main shop, right? And you got your dedicated guy. Let's say the lower volume dealership. You got guy number one, technician number two, and then you have a main shop step, right? Load these guys up, keep these guys going. When you feel like you're overflowed or there's too much, then you start flipping things to the main shop. Maybe even some of your cream puffs, your quick oil change, tire rotate, your low mileage cars. Give those to the main shop so they can turn and burn and get those cars through, right? So yes, a dedicated team. There's enough money in doing recon well to even at a low vol. It's a little bit harder because we know techs for lower volume. For because techs don't grow on trees, and but you know typically if you're the 30 to 50, 60 cars a month, maybe two technicians, right? You'll start get close to 80 to 100, maybe three technicians. Over 100 cars a month, maybe three to four. This Wesley Chapel Toyota dealership near me, they got like six you know used car guys. They crank out 2 to 300 cars a month, and they clock 5 to 6 days. So they
yeah.
are a monster.
3 or 4 experienced guys will take you really far, and
I like what you just said. Experienced.
they'll also they'll be able to handle a lot more changes in volume
Hmm.
over like a less experienced technician. Like they have a lot more grit in them because they have experience and they know what to look for, and
Yeah.
they're not as easily frustrated or perturbed. They don't have to stop and go watch a YouTube video for 2.5 hours because they already did that 10 years ago, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that experience is going to help out a lot. It's just a matter of incentivizing them correctly and making sure that it feels valuable to be on the used car team, because otherwise your most experienced tech is going to be looking for the service waiter work.
My God. So, you said experience. Here's another pitfall that a lot of dealerships make. Okay. When it comes to used cars, a lot of times dealerships will give an internal rate, a break on the price of labor, sometimes a break on the parts. So, in that same thinking, they want to put the cheapest mechanics on the used car team, right? Because it's just used cars. I think that's a big pitfall, right? Because if you're going to put your C technician on used cars, you're going to get C results, right? You're going to get things
Mm-hmm.
missed. So at least have some experience on your used car. If you're going to have some dedicated technicians, it shouldn't be the kid that just graduated from whatever, and you want to pull somebody out of lube tech to work on car, to do whether it's a timing belt or whatever the cars need, extensive brake work or whatever. But you could also use it as a career pathing step, the used car team. But at least have somebody on your team who's alpha or who has experience, who's kind of a mentor, more of a master, um,
Mm-hmm.
who has experience. And then it's built in. I mean, used cars, nobody spends more money on the shop than the used car department, right? And they're pumping cars through the shop. If things are going right in your dealership, they should be beat down the doors to get on the used car team, because there's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of gravy built in there too, right? Your 1.5 or your 1 hour or whatever you get paid for your used car inspection, we know damn well it takes you 30 minutes. You're going to go drive the car. You're going to shoot out if you have the app on your phone, the Rapid Recon app, you're going to shoot pictures of the bald tires and whatever and the oil leak, and you're going to that there's some gravy built in there, right? Another thing that happens, so make sure there's some experience on your dedicated team. If you're throwing your kids, I say kids because usually it's the young ones coming up through the ranks, they want to aspire to be line technicians. What better way to get exposed to doing bigger jobs than to not have that customer waiting in the showroom complaining or putting them in a rental car, but at least doing that, then having somebody, a mentor on the used car team, a more experienced person to overlook and supervise, right? So
100%. And I've
yes.
seen that work successfully, Bobby, as well, in many different situations. And
Hmm.
some dealers, when they have that dedicated used car team, they'll have a team lead. That's the most experienced technician on the team. And
Hmm.
he's also kind of a mini shop foreman. He decides what work is going to get dispatched to his guys because he knows them very well and he knows what their
Hmm.
capabilities are. He
Yep.
knows when he's got a particularly bad diagnosis, that's when he's going to work on, or if,
Hmm.
if it's going to be a finicky repair, he and another guy are going to work together so he can teach him.
Yep.
But yeah, that's exactly what I would describe it as sort of the best that you could get is a team with, a dedicated, strong, experienced technician. And then if you don't have enough to fill out the team, you can give that guy some helpers, as it were, and they can
Hmm.
handle all the easy cars while he'll take care of the
Hmm.
lemons.
Hmm.
So uh, what's important there though is it's never a fire and forget thing. You got to keep managing these folks. And like if I'm an internal writer, one thing I'm going to be looking at is, am I overusing my experienced guy? Because that would be the first thing that I would be worried about in that situation, is just making sure in terms of utilization that everybody's getting their fair shake and none of those other guys on the team are just sitting around.
Yeah.
uh you know uh
Yep.
but but anyway, that's a great point, Bobby. And I've seen it work. I've seen it really, really successful where you have a dedicated team. You have like the team lead, and he's dispatching all the work for his guys. And typically that guy and the used car manager have a great rapport, great
Hmm.
relationship.
Hmm. Yeah, and then along with that, I kind of lost what I was going to say, but kind of
Sorry.
segueing into, no, you're fine. Kind of segue into, okay, dedicated team, some, alpha guys, and then some of the pitfalls that take place that are just kind of auxiliary to the meat of putting cars through the shop. One of the things I was going to say is slow approvals.
I'm still here. I just reset my camera.
Oh,
Slow
okay. Yes,
approvals. Yeah.
slow approvals.
Oh yeah.
That
100%. 100%.
we me Josh, I think our entire team, our performance consultant team, who we deal with dealers all over the country. There's two things not to suck at, right? And let's go with the two more pitfalls. Starting on day zero, right? If the car is here and ready to go, let's get it in the damn shop, or as we now say, get your pictures and your pre-wash done quick. Get it into the damn shop as
Get it
soon as
into the
possible.
process. Yeah, at the
Anybody
very
can
least.
rush a detail. You can rush a detail and deliver to a customer, but you can't rush, an inspection and an ordering of parts and a repair. You know what I mean? So, get that done quick. But start on day zero. The second thing to do well, approve work in a timely fashion. It should be minutes. We have steps in our recon, tool workflow, UCM approval step. I love having that step. Back in the day, we were just not really, there's another way to notify when things need to be approved, but putting the step in
Still
there
exists.
puts the used car team on the clock. And
Hmm.
when I see that above an hour, I still jump them. I'm still like, listen, why are we taking an hour and a half, 2 hours to approve work, right? You know, and that needs to be minutes. Here's a tool that you're already using, that enables that to happen, right? Put it in there and make a decision, right? Because if the parts are here, it's shit. The car's still up on the lift. The parts are here. Go get the parts. Let's get this car going. Used car managers, I've said this a million times, you got no business guns ablazing looking for your cars if you are slow at approving work. You're going to miss parts cutoff times. You're going to see that your parts hold component, your step in your workflow is going to expand because you're missing parts cutoff times. Just add 2 to 3 days to every car that you dragged, your decision making on because it was past the cutoff time. And service departments usually applaud that narrative because nothing. And then what if you're a slow approver? You've also trained all your technicians to just park the car outside, put the keys on their bench. I'm not going to hear back today, or maybe tomorrow, end of day tomorrow. What's going on? I'm going to be on to my next car, and then they're 2, 3 cars deep, and then they hear back about the car from 2 days ago, and then they're like, oh well, I'll get to it. I'm buried underneath this stuff, right? And it just kind of snowballs. Be fast at approving work. That is a
100%.
huge, huge pitfall. It's kind of the behavioral, it's the intention of doing recon well. Approve work fast. Start on day zero. Everything else is just bottleneck management. And
Yeah, and
almost always it's communication that's the problem, not because people suck.
yep, communication. I mean, we could talk about that as a pitfall, and I will actually here in a second. But I just want to reiterate with the same point you just made. the concurrently with that, if you're a used car manager listening, after the fact or right now, um, if you do handle your approvals quickly and you start on day zero and you're inquisitive, if you see a car in yellow or red and you ask questions and try to figure out what's going on with it and try to keep everybody on point, like if you're doing that part of the task, you have every right to stomp around looking for your cars now because you're doing
Hmm.
your part. You know what I mean?
Right.
You are the one representing your department and your inventory. You have a very specific intention for these vehicles, and so when you do your part and you make sure that everything's on point from your end, now you have carte blanche to look at others in the organization and tell them to step it up
Hmm.
because you're doing your part. And there, needs of UCM approval is one of the controllable steps that you'll find in our default workflow. There's also parts estimate. There's also finalize estimate. Those steps should really just be as quick as
Yeah,
UCM
write
approval as
our
well.
write the RO. Here, if I give you the information, the VIN, stock, everything, mileage, how long does it take you to write an RO? 15 seconds at best.
Yeah.
That's another step in the get the ROs written, get them open, and get them in queue, get them in the shop.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
for
these little gaps, like what you were talking about, Josh, these pass through steps, these communication steps. It's huge because people usually suffer with recon because of communication first and foremost, and then sprinkle in some manpower or efficiency or organizational stuff.
Yeah. And all I was going to say is that for the for the used car manager, having dotted their I's, crossed their T's, that really does engender a sense of urgency throughout the entire process.
Mhm.
Up and down the line, like what you said earlier, Bobby, is a great example where if you're not fast with approvals, you train your technicians to expect that when they're done with an inspection and they've sent on to for parts pricing, that they can just park the car and they're not going to hear back for a few days. Alternatively, if you do the opposite and you're super quick with those approvals and the technician, they've still got the car up on the bay when the parts are delivered to them or up on the lift when the parts are delivered to them, that's going to engender that urge. They're going to know, oh, he's serious about this. She's serious about this. She's not
Mhm.
messing around. As soon as she knows what's up or he knows what's up with the car, they follow up and they follow through. That
Mhm.
really does have a profound effect. I'm telling you it does because I've had conversations with technicians where they say something to the effect of, "Oh yeah, he doesn't mess around. As soon as I text him, he's right on board with as soon as I send this through Rapid Recon Pro, he's right on board with it." And I
Mhm.
I can see the effect that that has. So, it's not trivial. And of course, if you're a used car manager, you should already understand this, but I
Mhm.
think the part that people don't understand is just how much of an effect leadership has on other people, not by what they say, but by what they do. And
Mhm.
following through on your commitment to the tool is exactly how you get the rest of your staff to follow through on
Yep.
their commitment as well.
And I get it. Sometimes there's some squeaker cars, so it's like, man, I thought I'd get it through this car through cheaper. Let me think about it. I really don't want to spend 5 grand on this Corolla, right? Or whatever. I know. And then we had that one Highline store, Josh. They were dealing with Lamborghinis, Bentleys. So
Yeah, I was really
it's
putting the putting the used
you
car
were
manager's
crushing
feet to
them,
the
but I'm
fire.
like, you were, but they're making 10, 20, $30,000 decisions, right? And then,
Yeah.
ordering parts from Italy and all that crap for the Lamborghinis. But yeah, that could be a little different, but still, you got to be fast. You got to be good enough. Make the decision. If you're going to punt it, or be married to it, or just you got to make the decisions sooner than later.
Yep. 100%.
Well, looks like we got about a minute left. Any other pitfalls you can think of, Josh?
Really, I mean, we could go
I,
on with a part two of this at some other point in time. I think
yeah,
this is a good topic and gives us a chance to kind of, peruse a lot of the process at once. But
yep.
Aaron, I see you're there, and I'm sorry to call you out by name, but hey there. If you'd like to see what you're our one viewer or one participant, you have a poll up. If you'd like, you can be the one who decides what our next topic is. You can decide what these two professionals will be talking about a month from now.
Mm.
But otherwise, we'll make the decision ourselves. But I just wanted to review those topics with you, Bobby, and see, what are your interests
Okay.
here. One thing I wanted to talk about recently, something that came to mind recently that we haven't talked about is how did the standard, the default workflow that you and I have agreed on over the years, how did that come to be? What did we observe in dealerships that we were finally able to settle on? Oh, this one will work. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and looks like Aaron wants to talk about that. Um,
Yep.
but
Yeah,
we
and
also
I was
have.
gonna
Go
go in,
ahead.
I was gonna go into a segue. Josh is like, how long as a ballpark should shop time take? How long should detail take? How long can what kind of goal time should you set for getting photos on the car, right? And all these default, if in place, and if you can hit those goals, you should be roughly 5 days or less with your controllable recon, right? Your controllable front time to line should be 5 days or less. Industry best practice. I know there's been books written on the 3 day turn. Yeah, I can get it through the shop in 3 days, maybe detailed in 3 days, but all the other stuff to make sure it's standing tall so you don't have to apologize for your car. Maybe we can go over some best practice goal times on our next discussion too.
It looks like Aaron's got a question for us. I don't want to leave him high and dry here with the last minute. He says,
Okay.
have you been able to overcome the pre-sale of a vehicle before reconning? So have we been able to, I guess, have we come to an organization, found that practice, and then fixed it somehow for them? Um,
That's kind of a cultural thing, right? Our tool can tell you where it is that, hey, it hasn't been inspected yet, hasn't been through the shop yet. It's up to the management of your people to kind of push the brakes. If, hey, I've seen it's absolutely condemned that you go get that car that has not been through the shop and put a customer in it and test drive it and sell it.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely not.
That
So, yeah, a lot of that's whatever's built in culture. I don't know if you need an orange, you got to wrap the car in caution tape before it goes through the shop, or put some kind of notation on it, or just have that culture and that policy in your dealership. Um, you know,
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, so we have in the workflow, Aaron, sometimes we'll put a missing keys category. So if salespeople are coming stealing keys from service, putting customers in for a test drive, we can
Sales
make
took
note of
keys.
that. Yeah, sales took keys. We can see how long that took in the process on average. So we can demonstrate that for our customers, what kind of value loss they get when that happens. And then of course we'll elaborate on how that affects their
Yeah, that's a good
process for
point too.
WIOs.
And noting in the tool notes, hey, salesperson took keys to show customer, and boom, boom, and maybe having a way of tracking those slip through cars that you've kind of violated the no. So
Yep.
yep,
And then one other thing I would say, if usually what's happening when you're selling cars before you're reconning is you're kind of drowning, like you're underwater. You keep putting you
yep,
could keep putting these pre-sold vehicles in front of everything else, and so you keep drowning. I've seen dealers, what they'll do is they'll take Saturday and Sunday overtime work, invite whoever wants to volunteer, and they just clear out all the inspections that they had to do
yeah,
for the week. So sometimes you gotta go outside the box. Go a little bit more. I don't know, for the full McCoy, as it were, but that's what
yeah,
I've seen dealerships do. If your head's underwater and you're drowning, you just got to take Saturday, Sunday, and
yeah,
invite some of your technicians to work for overtime pay. Get all the inspections done, get all the parts ordered, and then you'll know by when you start Monday, you can just turn out those repairs, done, 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 done,
yeah.
and hopefully that will get your head above water, and you don't have
Good
you,
point.
you can avoid the pre-selling issue,
Aaron had
or at
another
least.
question. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry, Josh. I didn't mean to step on you."
Oh, go ahead.
No,
That's
good
that's
point,
fine.
Eric.
That's what I was going.
He does have that taken by sales step, but it's hard to control, right? They come snag keys or whatever. Kind of maybe gatekeep those keys somehow. Have a key box, a locking key box, in maybe your the internal advisor's office. Keys. That's such a common issue, Aaron. I feel for you because I used to deal with that too. And sales has the keys, but we don't sometimes know when we take them, or they went back in the shop and they snagged them from the technicians at lunch, right? Oh, here's the keys on the bench. Let me go find the car, and now the car's missing, right? So that's a tough one. Yeah, I would start with a really strong policy that if a car is in the mechanical process or you do not take those keys. The salespeople are forbidden to. It's that's a tough one to manage. I feel for you, but have the policy first, and then have a way of gatekeeping keys. Secondly,
Yeah, and I
maybe
would
if the
also
technician
say,
goes to lunch, put the keys in a key box, right? Have a locking key box or a key track, things like that. But yeah, that's a tough one.
yeah, so certainly look at the custody of the keys from when the unit arrives, and how does that get over to service. So, does that come in? Does the used car manager hand that over along with like a little used car sheet, with describing
Oh,
the car?
yeah, a lot of
How,
times the first thing a porter will key track it. First step is key track. Get these
yeah,
key
key
tracked,
track, of
and then
course.
right, and then the technicians or whoever could go to the key track machine to get it out because they got the RO and they're going to inspect the car. So I
Yeah,
know
that's
a
the
lot of processes, get that thing key tracked first and foremost.
yeah, that's the part to look at is the custody of the keys upon receipt. And then all the other thing I would say, Aaron, is just make everyone else in service aware of your sales to key step and make it clear to them that
Hmm.
if you come back to your bay or you to your toolbox and you don't see the keys on there, just stick the car in sales to keys. And then what I would do is I'd have a conversation with my GSM and my UCM. I'd make sure that they get alerted when cars go into that sales to keys step. And I would ask them, hey, are you guys willing if my techs are trying to finish work on a car, a salesperson comes, takes the keys, car's missing. Um, if I put a unit in one of these steps, will you guys make it a priority to track down where this car is at or who has it? Because can you go look,
Hmm.
and then obviously you can also look in the key track machine and put a note in there yourself, like who has the keys. But there may be if it's from the technician's desk, then it's going to look like it's the technician who has the keys. But
Yeah, and now we don't want.
we're
Yeah, and another thing we don't like too is technicians locking their keys in their toolboxes, right? And then for some reason they go home for the weekend and there's a car out there and the keys are that's bad too. So a key keeper or a key track or some key box maybe for when the cars are in the shop. If you are not working on the car and it's going to be a little bit, maybe you go to lunch or something, maybe put lock the keys in a key box to where somebody of authority or somebody who's gatekeeping the situation would have to give them the keys. Not a lot gets in the way of selling a car, right? Could be the manager coming and getting these keys, right? But a way to notate it in the tool, it's that could always be a challenge in the dealership. Well, we great dialogue, Aaron. We appreciate your participation. We love it when the people that really make recon happen are out there in the field, add some value to these calls. So
Yep, thanks, Aaron. And anytime, for all of our listeners who catch us after the fact, we'd love to have you guys on live. And I just want to reiterate that this is a interactive webinar. So if ever you're listening to this podcast and you think, boy, I'd love to ask these guys some questions, or hey, I got a totally counter perspective to these guys, and I just want to denounce them. I want to have you on too. I want to be able to hear from everybody. So
yeah.
just keep in mind it's interactive. If you ever want to speak to us, you can hop in on one of these calls every Thursday, every third Thursday of every month,
Mhm.
and every third Thursday of every month. And when you hop on, you can just raise your hand and you can be a part of this discussion.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, appreciate everybody. Our next podcast will be the 16th, I think we saw, right? Third Thursday, the
I got to count
16th of
again.
July. No, I'm pretty sure it's the 16th of July. Yes. So we'll see everybody
Okay.
then, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Particular thanks to Aaron.